Howdy guys, welcome back to the channel, Maverick here, and today we're going to be watching Dr. Stone episode 18. So, with the last two episodes out of the way, we got past the entire, the flashback, the origin story of Ishigami Village, what happened since humanity was petrified, the sacrifice and the courage of the 6 astronauts who were in space and whatnot, which, again, they'll show up a little bit later as well. This is not the end that we'll see of them, or I guess more specifically, Senku's father, but that's for another time, right? Because, after all that's been said and done, we do still have a main story here, at least the current main story, and that is the big conflict between Senku and his kingdom of science versus Tsukasa and his kingdom of raw power, I guess you could say. And so we're finally going back into this main storyline, and we're gonna be ready to do some science. So let's get right into it. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Although I think not much science is going to happen in this episode. It's been a while. Well, he is more one of a kind. Okay, they're saying the Kingdom of Might. Sure. I like how there's only 2 guards in the whole village. Here they come. Smart move. Hey. Alright. Let's get this real quick. See you guys in a second. And back. Stone Wars. You look much more like a caveman than he does, to be honest. As you might guess, someone who's named would be a lot more stronger.
ちゃんかそいつが来ちゃったらぶっちゃけもう逃げるしかないよ、全員で。こないだ復活させたそいつの名前は氷河ちゃん。俺が潜入して手引きするよってことにして一足先に出発したんだけどね。時間稼ぎもそうそう長くは。大変だー、敵だよー。バカだ、ありえない。なんだこの男の槍の加速は。もう攻めてきちゃったの？バイヤーすぎる。金狼ちゃんが戦ってんの氷河だ。待て琥珀、今だ。橋を切り落とせ金狼。離せ父上。バカ者、橋の上で槍にかなうものか。しかし琥珀、子供たちのこと考えてよ。切り落とすしかないでしょ。ほら早く。
I mean, if you really want to cut it down, he doesn't have to be the one who does it. But anyways.
そうだよ、切らなきゃ。村のためにも足を落とさなきゃだよ。それでいい。俺はもう助からん。できないよ。できるわけないよ。だってそんなの金狼が死んじゃうじゃんか。お兄ちゃん。おお、どうするんじゃい、鉄の筒を。とっときの最後の火薬をはったりに使う羽目になるとはな。
I like how they have a lot of time to do this as well.
村一番の力持ちってマグマちゃんだよね。ああ、敵に投げてよこの石。思いっきりね。ああ、当たるわけねえだろうがこんなもん。一体誰がてめえの言うことなんか。外れていいの。村長の座、千空ちゃんから奪いたいんでしょ。村自体なくなっちゃうかもよ。今は共闘しないと。マグマちゃん。
Husha.
氷河ちゃん、みんな一旦引いて。この村で銃が完成しちゃってる。逃げろ。氷河ちゃんもジーマーでファイヤーだよ。ってことはまさか君が噂の。てめえらがトロイカでとっくに完成したぞ、科学王国がよ。きっと大喜びですよ、司くんも。ああ、司に伝えろ。石神千空は生きてる。科学の力で銃を100億丁ほど完成させたってな。
Well, that's a little bit ridiculous.
アセトアニリドだ。サルファ剤作る途中でついでにできたやつな。あとは傷口にサルファ剤でもぶっかけときゃ明日には完璧に治ってんだろ。明日？適当すぎんだろ。完璧に治った。やべえ。あ、違う。痩せ我慢だこれ。全然まだだった。門番の俺が一人のうのうと寝ているわけにはいかん。能の輩たちの
総攻撃がいつ来るかもわからないのだ。
クソ真面目か。お真面目だよ。勤労だもん。
ああ、まあそうでもねえ。連中が来るタイミングは読める。
こんな舐められっぱですごすごつかさんとこ帰れるわけはねえだろうが。
Like, seriously, who looks more like a caveman?
あんな広がりだもん。
なら攻めるのは沖縄銃の使えない嵐ん時だね。
連中はありもしねえ銃を警戒して嵐の日をちんたら待つ。弦がそう誘導してくれんだろ。
おお、そうか。嵐を待てばいいのか。
なめられっぱがどうとか脳の溶けてる意見は置いといて、嵐の日にってのもバレバレすぎて飛んで火にいる虫感ありますね。
ああ、
千空くんが生きてた時点で戦況は180度変わってます。ちゃんとしましょう。すぐに戻って司くんと大部隊を編成した方がいい。
はあ、ビビってんのかよ、氷河。その管やりとかいうわけのわかんねえ武器がなきゃろくに戦いもしねえ広がりだもんな。てめえはよ。
Ah,
管やりってこの竹筒みたいなのついてるこれ？初めて見た。触らない方がいいですよ。僕に殺されたくなければ。失礼、氷河ちゃん。
嵐だ。嵐が来たら即攻撃だ。おう、よっしゃ。
like, seriously, who looks more like caveman?
このまま千空くんと戦わせるのも悪くない。もし勝てればそれでいいし、戦ってやられてくれれば科学王国の手の内がわかる。捨て駒にしたってどうでもいい連中だ。やべえ、かっけえ。なんかあれかも。これでボヤボヤ病が治ったの？
すごいな、妖術ではなく科学。
勤労もボヤボヤ病じゃなくなってよかったんだよ。
おお、スイカも新調してもらったのか。
スイカはやっぱりこの方が慣れててしっくりくるんだよ。
科学の戦闘準備それだけじゃねえぞ。
黒マスクの男は相当な手だれだぞ。何か科学で対策でもある。
Now for some weaponry.
バトル組が大涙流して喜ぶもんがな。職人の腕の見せどころだ。
Ah.
それかっこいいじゃないの。
ものづくりに興奮すると肉が膨らむのか。
さっさと準備始めんぞ。ぐずぐずすんな。嵐が来んのとどっちが早いかの勝負だ。おや石神村総出で働け。
Being a village chief sure is handy now.
凄まじい山おろしの風だ。
嵐だ。たった3日で来やがった。天は俺様に味方してるぞ。これで銃は使えねえ。
I like how nobody questions Gin on how he was able to do the things that they perceived he did. Honestly, when I first saw this in the manga, I was like, what the hell is this?
このストーンワールドじゃぶっちぎりで最強の科学の剣だ。いいですね。すごくちゃんとしてる科学王国。
出来はちょいブサイクかもしんねえがな。
完璧な視界。これがメガネの力。
マグマも琥珀ちゃんも勤労もいるんだから大丈夫。
なんという鋭い切れ味だ。
これが科学の力。
stone weapons versus iron weapons.
松の炭で1200度まで上げる。火が紫になったら頃合いだ。叩きまくって金属の中のゴミをぶち飛ばす。そしたら折りたたんでまたグツグツ焼いてさらに叩く。鉄の折り返し鍛錬っつってな。繰り返すことでパワーアップさせんだ。このくっそ地道できちい作業を10回以上繰り返す。つうのが本格的な日本刀作りの手順だが、2回でいい。いいのかよそこは終わりがてえ現代科学様だ。金属の結晶構造を見たら2回でほぼ仕上がってんのが分かった。俺らは日本刀の芸術家じゃねえ。スピード勝負で科学的に飛ばせる工程は全部すっ飛ばす。それよか大事なのは焼き入れだ。こんがり焼いた刃だけ
See, this part, you know, originally when I first saw this part in the manga, I was like, oh, jeez, of course they're Japanese. They have the pride of Japanese katanas and whatnot. But see, the thing that Senku actually says here is, in a sense, you know, overthrowing the wisdom of old, right? How, you know, the entire legends and traditions of folding a sword over 1,000 times to create the best. I mean, of course, they still call it the most powerful blade in the world, which is definitely very debatable. But at the very least, they acknowledge that the ways of old doesn't necessarily mean that it makes the katana any more legendary than it should be.
これ見よがしに日本刀なんかを見せつけて。ただ私の管槍貫流槍術は刀などには負けませんが。
丸い月なんだこりゃ。
この氷河という槍使い、他のものとは圧の格が全く違う。
村最強はマグマと琥珀ちゃんと金狼ちゃん。あの3人を一気に倒せば勝ちだよ、氷河ちゃん。
情報感謝します玄君。まあ見ればわかりますね。
なんだあの剣とかいう野郎、敵なのか。
裏切りの裏切りをしたのか、コウモリ男。
違う。この3人で組んでかからねば太刀打ちできんと暗に伝えているのだ。よこせ。
勝手すぎる。ならば行くぞ、金狼。マグマって聞いてもいない。それがマグマだよ。構わん。嫌が王でも共闘させる。マグマの巨体を目隠しに私を切り上げろ、金狼。
あ、わかった。切り上げる。
Oh, shit!
これでもなお上空に対応してくるのか。
Now she's
撃さえさばけば。手元をひねらず槍先を回転させている。これでは槍先が捉えられる。
槍の先が
いきなりちぎれた。
guess why that happened.
石器では作り得ない鋭利な切り込みが外からは見えづらく、力が加わるとちぎれるように。まるで手品ですね。
ちまで誰がそんなことを。管槍ってこの竹筒みたいなのついてる子。
Eh.
玄君いいですね、君は。すごくちゃんとしてる。裏切り者の薄汚いコウモリとして。
何言ってるの氷河ちゃん。なんで俺がバレてんのか。
Ah, I love Gin.
さすが氷河ちゃん。
スイカ、現に届けもんだ。 伝わんねえやつをな。しっかりやりやがれ、名探偵スイカ。
Detective Suika on the scene.
このお花、明るいところでしか見たことがないんだよ。なんでこんな日陰に。森が遊び場のスイカならわかるんだよ。これはゲンがつけてくれた目印。
I like how one was able to throw it very well, and one was able to catch it very well.
この花知ってる？日陰には咲かないはずだから内緒の目印にぴったり。犬ほおずきっていうステージでも使ってたお気に入りの花でさ。花言葉がね、嘘つ
Ah, I love Gin.
いい立ち筋してんじゃねえかメンタリスト。そそるだろう切れ味。これが科学の刃だ。
Ah, and we're just getting started. Alright, see you guys after the ending. Well, here we go. The first actual battle between the two kingdoms, right? Led by Hyoga, and the rest of the, I guess, brutes, if you want to call them that. So, before we get into any of the other references and whatnot, I just want to quickly mention something about the pacing. Well, I guess can't really say pacing. The composition of this episode in particular, and what scenes it chose to adapt, right? Because honestly, I feel like the storyboard and pacing was a little bit off compared to the original material. So the whole thing seemed a little bit unnatural. Some notable cases to me would be the scene where Ginro was, being asked to cut down the bridge. That part in the original manga, I feel like it was much more fluid. Here, it seemed kind of, cringy in a kind of way, because it seemed like time was of essence, but at the same time, it seemed like everybody was doing things rather calmly and not in that of an urgent manner. So the entire scene there just felt a little bit off to me. Like literally, Kinro has been stabbed and is nearly falling over the bridge, and yet people, he's still walking up and then going like trying to saw the bridge off and then stopping there, right? So that part, I feel like the order in which the scenes were put on could have been done a little bit better. And another example would be when Senku was preparing the gun as well, right? The decoy with the gunpowders. That also was a scene which I felt they sort of animated too much of it and made the entire tension of the scene fall apart, right? Because even though it seems that they are in sort of like a critical position, everybody's still going on with their business at normal speed as usual. So those are some cons that I want to get out of the way first. So in regards to the actual episode, right, it references a few different things. First of all, of course, we got katanas coming out. I already mentioned this briefly within the reaction as well, but just to say it again, katanas within the medieval arms enthusiast community, I guess you could say, aren't really held in high regard, right? If you like history or you like medieval armaments or whatnot, and you're not just completely biased towards Japanese history and Japanese weaponry in particular, the consensus. The general consensus of the community is that katanas aren't really all that, right? Because we, as the general public perhaps understands or is in contact with more, Japanese media and whatnot, and especially within this community, right, we're all anime viewers and whatnot. So of course, katanas have this certain sort of mythos to them, right? But in reality, they were just, they were, of course, they were crafted very well, but at the same time, it sort of, the entire folding of the swords and whatnot, that was to sort of augment the types of how can I say it, the distinct weakness that it had due to the iron quality and whatnot, the steel quality, which was definitely, the ironworking, steelworking of Japanese was definitely not as good as that of medieval Europe, and I suspect raw materials probably also played a factor there as well. So the entire thing about the Japanese katana craftsmen doing so much work to craft this perfect weapon is really just to overcome these disadvantages that they were presented with, right? So that is that. I'm sure that there's going to be some hardcore katana fanboys and whatnot, but that's just, it's scientific fact, right? And especially since we're watching a series about science, we should learn to accept this. And they did acknowledge, like I said within the episode, they did sort of acknowledge that, if you really do it correctly, you don't even really need to fold it like 1,000 times over or whatnot. Like, that is just overkill, right? It's not really going to accomplish much more than just folding it 2 or 3 times. So I did like that they at least acknowledged that. And of course, within the context of this series, the episode here, where it's iron weapons, steel weapons versus Stone Age weapons, literally put stones and sticks put together, of course there's going to be a huge advantage there. It doesn't really matter how katanas rank within the entire hierarchy of medieval weaponry, right? So that is that part. And let's talk a little bit about Hyoga, right, and the particular, fighting style that he has. It's easy to dismiss this as sort of like just anime nonsense and whatnot, but this actually is a real weapon in medieval Japan, and it's also a real fighting style. The kudayari is a special sort of spear, which basically the premise of it is that with a normal spear, you just got your rod and then your pointy your spear tip at the very front, and that is it, right? Now, kudayari tries to put sort of like a ring structure, like a handle for you to hold on that's slidable. That's and it's slotted over the rod portion of the spear. So one of the easiest and crudest methods of doing this would be to make a sort of metal ring, right? Maybe big enough that your hand can actually hold it, like imagine a sort of like a cup structure, except that the top and bottom are both open. Just slide it over the rod, and then you would have a very crude style of kudayari, right? So the entire premise of it is that it's, because of the reduced friction, it is very good for stabbing, thrusting, and also because it has a sort of leeway within it as well, because your handle is actually larger than the rod itself, so the rod can sort of have leeway and bounce back and forth within the sort of holder, right? And that is how it got to this style that we see here, where just shaking the spear around makes it so that it's unpredictable where the spear is actually going to go. So that is an actual weapon developed sometime near the end of Senku Jidai, near the end of the Warring States period. So that is historically relevant. And the kanryu style that Hyoga shows off is also pertaining to the usage of kudayari on the battlefield and against others. Although I do believe that they also teach, that particular fighting style also teaches the usage of swords as well, but of course it's not actually portrayed here, right? So basically, the entire thing that he did was fairly accurate to a certain extent, right? The fighting style and the type of weapon that he was using. So yeah, and the rest well, I said numerous times before, I really love Gin's character, and you can see clearly he's being this really annoying person, but he's on the side of good, and I just love him, right? I just love how the way he handles things, and of course Senku is Senku, right? So, yeah, with the end of this episode, we can see that Hyoga and his men are in a disadvantaged position, although, of course, if that was just the case, then things wouldn't be as fun, right? So, of course, there's going to be some more things to come in the next episode. I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say that this is not the end of the troubles, right? And also, even though I said that this is the start of the actual fight and we're going to get even deeper and deeper into the sort of ridiculousness of scientific advancement, as Senku is able to accomplish, I think it doesn't really start until the end of next episode, where they will probably sort out their next objective, their next big project, right? So, yeah, looking forward to that part. And yeah, that's all I want to say for this episode. Heads up for you guys, next episode will probably be delayed. I'm going to be on a business trip next week, and well, I can't really do videos on the road, right? So I'll try to get them out as soon as possible once I get back. But in case of Dr. Stone, it's possible that it'll be delayed maybe any time from 1 day to a week, right? I got a lot of shows going on for this season, so I'm going to have to catch up to all of them. So just a heads up for you guys. And there we go. That's it. Hopefully I'll see you guys soon again. Till then, bye bye.